Hi, good morning. My name is Alan Ken. This is Walter Feltz. I'm the technical service manager for Texrite, and this is the sales manager. And we want to thank you all for coming in early this morning to have a talk with us and kind of go through some of the new things that are showing up in the technology. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about today was actually about non-cracking grouts. And I would basically run through a few slides just so we can have a good introduction and background. So one of the things when we talk about non-cracking grout are just things that can happen on the job site, things that we want to eliminate or try to simplify. So when we talk about things that happen on the job site, we always have that mix too wet or too loose, and those are the issues. If the proportions, the drying, curing, anything like movement, and that's something else that we can't necessarily address, but we're going to be able to do it now as a solution, and at the same time, absorption of the tile. So we have this world of tile installation, and we're bringing all these new variables in, but how are we going to address that on the installation side and the material side? So with that, you're getting this new introduction of pre-mixed grouts from me and my competitors, but we really want it to be something that is just not new, it's new technology. So we have to embrace that new technology just like we embraced airbags and GPS. So at this point, we're really trying to, again, streamline the process of the grouting and the materials on the job site. So one of them was just about mixing. We didn't want to have that variation in job to job, installer to installer. At the same time, we didn't want to even create dusting and dust on the job site. So again, that's another benefit that we get out of these systems that we see that. The other thing that we're going to see is, again, if I'm grouting it, we're basically ready to go. So actually more time is spent installing product than it is about mixing product. So again, their productivity goes much higher. And at the same time, when we talk about grouting and cleaning, the products now that we offer have color blended into the sand. And so that basically means the color system doesn't allow color staining. So that color staining property is now embedded in the sand. So even if I was to take black, I'm going to see a much higher level of productivity because I'm not fighting the pigmentation systems. And then this same colored sand system allows us to have almost basically variation from two grouters. So two grouters now, they're no longer trying to mix it two different ways. And then because the color's integrated in the system, they can actually, quote, meet in the middle of the room when we used to say, don't do that. Now they can do that. And also we can actually do repairs and come back at a later date. So again, new technology, new things. So the other things that we want to require is just an air dry cure. So once the grout's actually installed, we just want that material to dry out, naturally by air. And because it's now almost basically all synthetic, you no longer have efflorescence. So that portion of that world that we understand can happen is basically eliminated when we do these kind of resin technology systems. And then at the same time, you get this additional benefit that now the sealer's integrated in the product, so that sealer component is actually in the product the next day. So again, I reduce a labor cost of having to come back and do it. Now obviously we have to charge you for that cost. So if we understand the grout was going to be, say, a cement grout and seal it, we're going to add that component to it. So long as I have that bid and my customer understands that, I'm not really trading anything. I'm just making sure it's all integrated. That sealer showing up 24 hours also even helps on the job site because, again, we can't control some of the other trades. So having that sealed, and again, we look at it as a sealer not just being on the top. It's actually all the way through. Correct. So now, this is the bridge between cement and epoxies. So all the time we wanted something more simple, not quite as heavy duty. So now we have what we call stain resistant grouts. We're still going to have stain and chemical resistance for epoxies, but as long as we understand we have this new great go-between in there. So given that, now this is our punchline right here about non-cracking grout. That polymer technology allows the material to bend and flex. I have smaller boards up here you're more than welcome to walk on. And then even here, we're going to build a floor system that's not proper. Okay, and now the grout's not going to be flexing or cracking or popping out. So I encourage anybody after our talk here to come up here and try that out. And then the same thing, it's something much more simplified. Walter will actually do some of the installation live on stage, and then same thing, there's the product, QR scan code for anybody trying to look up direct information, and our booth is going to be 8333. So please come and see us, or right after the talk. So it's yours,
Okay.
Walter.
I don't know if I'm on. Am I on?
All right.
Can you hear me? Or am I just talking loud enough and that's
There you
why
go.
you can hear me? Okay. Thank you, Alan. As Alan was saying, we believe that we've designed the easiest to clean single component grout on the market. We've used them all. It's fairly simple to use, very easily cleaned up. As he was saying, there's absolutely no efflorescence at all in the product because there's no cement. It's all acrylic. You'll grout it just like any other normal grout. There's no mixing. The only thing we do, because there is a liquid and a solid in the bucket, is when we open the bucket, if it's been sitting for any length of time, you will see the liquid on top. You'll just turn it over. That's all we want to do is stir it up. You don't need to whip it up with a drill or anything like that. We just turn it over. And it'll literally just grout like any other normal grout that you would ever use. You want to fill the joints up to the point of refusal. And what I mean by that is once that joint is full, you'll see it bubble back up so you can tell that the joint is full. It works on all types of tiles, stone, marble, granite, mosaics, stainless, glass. You don't have to worry about any scratching. The aggregate that we use is smooth and round, so there's no aggressive scratching surface. The main difference here is when I grout this as opposed to using a normal sanded grout, typically you'd want to wait for that grout to start setting up in the joint before you started washing it. We're not actually trying to do that because the grout itself is water resistant. I really don't have to do that. Once it gets an initial set within the first minute or so, I can go ahead and start washing the product. So what I want to do, excuse me one second, is just get the grout down. Like so. And all I'm going to do is rinse the sponge out very well. I don't want a ton of excess water on the floor. And I'll just go around with a flat edge on the sponge in circles. And all I'm doing is smoothing out the grout joint. I'm not really trying to do a final wash on it. I'm smoothing it out and I'm re-emulsifying any residue of the grout that has started to set up on top. That's all I want to do is introduce a little bit of moisture to get that top portion working so that it doesn't start to set up on top of the tile. So I'm going to do that. Smooth out the grout, keep the sponge flat. And at that time, I'll just kind of let it sit there for another 5 or so minutes. And then I'll go back and I'll do a final wash to clean off any excess. The brilliant thing behind this is our acrylic dries clear. So the worst thing that could possibly happen is you get a clear sheen that dries over the top of the tile. Yeah, it's not really haze. It kind of reminds me of if you've ever pulled packing tape off of something and you've seen that adhesive residue left behind, that's really what it looks like. And that's pretty much the worst thing that can happen. We actually recommend going back with a little bit of ammonia and water, or if it's really bad, a citric cleaner like Goof Off or something to that effect that you would normally remove some kind of a glue adhesive residue with, takes it right off.
So the other benefit that you're going to see out of these type of grouts, and it was more of a aesthetic one, and I'd been in the business some 35 years, and anybody out in the crowd that's been at least 5 years, you had the consumer that says, well, when it got wet, it changed color. And I'm like, well, yeah, my pants get wet, they're going to change color, and it's going to dry back out. So in a shower system, counter system, they're sealed so internally they actually stay the same color wet and dry. So that's an additional benefit when we think about that, when you have that call. And then the other component is because it's air drying, within that 24 hours, we no longer have that call like, yeah, it's dark now, wait for the color, wait for 3 days, hang on there, it'll get there. So those are things that, again, that simplify, streamline the system. The other thing, because of this flexibility and the way it moves, we can't quite call it a caulk yet. But now we're actually going into corners and countertops, and where that interface is between the two different surfaces, you get that minor little shrinkage crack. This material now is actually absorbing that minor movement. So Walter says it in a different way than I do. We got 3 guys eliminated off the job. I go, no, we didn't get them eliminated. They're actually doing more productive work than caulking. So I always say it like that, like we had them terminated, that kind of thing. But it was one thing that you're to see these added benefits that are in the system.
Well, I think what Alan is trying to convey is that because of the flexibility of the product, we've been able to eliminate the unsightly caulk that sometimes goes in the corners, tub surrounds, or against the tub, from the tile to the tub deck, or from a shower pan going to the walls. Mainly, though, one of the key places that we've been able to eliminate the need for it is from countertops to backsplashes. Most people like to see this. They spend a lot of money. If you notice here, we use a nicer mosaic. They spend more money on a beautiful mosaic on the backsplash, and then they grout it, and then they got to caulk that, and you have all these different looks. And if you ask any homeowner, any designer, 90% of them, when you ask them, what's the thing you hate the most about tile? Does anybody have an answer for me what they think a designer would say? Grout. Yeah, grout. It never looks the same way as, the sample. It never comes out the same. A year from now, it looks different, or it's never the way you clean it. All those different things, and so they're always trying to do. Look at the industry now. We do the biggest possible tiles we can, with the smallest possible grout joints we can. 26 years ago when I started in the industry, grout was part of the aesthetics. Grout was part of the look. Grout is what set off the color of the tile. But because we have drifted away from in every other part of the industry, we've made better thin sets, and I see competitors, vendors of our friends of ours that are sitting in the audience, and they'll attest to this. As manufacturers, we've drifted away from doing lower end thin sets. We always make better thin sets. We want to give them better bondability. We've done the same thing with grout, and through education, we hope to change the mindset of our customers to using a product like this. One of the things, though, that Alan usually talks about, he was talking about where the color comes from. If anybody here has ever seen or used a black grout, my hands would be literally stained completely, and you'll notice there's literally no stain whatsoever. There's no pigment in the grout whatsoever. The color is the same always. So the pigment cannot be washed off. It stays the same. That's how we're able to maintain and control the color from every single unit of product that we manufacture. So if you buy one today and you buy one a year from now, it will be the same color. So I'm going to move this. Because it will take me forever to wash this like that. We've also come out with, Alan, if you want to talk about, while I finish cleaning this, the new designer colors.
Sure. So again, what we're doing is we're keeping a little paper liner on the top. So if you had a partial unit, we're just basically placing that black back on to block the air. So I'm going to have easily a 2-year shelf life, and then I can have another year shelf life, even if it wasn't to be used, that can go on. Again, it's a greener footprint because now that can go on to the next job or stay as a repair. And at the same time, we're throwing, again, less refuse of cement, grout, made, and mixed. And then I'm going to move him over ever so slightly. We've gone ahead and introduced a translucent version, and at the same time, we're able to introduce a version that has the metallic sparkle to it. And so this one's a silver one called Frost. And again, you'll get closer to it and you can see the light shine or shimmer off it. I'll see if we can't make it do that in the lighting there, that you can actually see it kind of shimmer off of there. And then he's actually going to grout some of that gold. And here's those same systems here as we see those.
Let me wash the float off real quick.
Sure, or you want to use that other float?
No, I like these red ones.
All
really
right.
Nice. They clean very well.
So the only thing that we would probably do anything different again when we talk about the pre-mix systems, when we talk to, I'll say contractors, installers, they're going to install now in what we call a 20-minute window. So instead of doing the entire room and coming back, they can actually work in sectional places. That's really the change. And then even if they started and stopped, they're always going to have color uniformity. So again, even in this world now, we say, hey, grout the whole room, and then they get called away anyhow, and then we have this mismatch. But now we actually want to promote this cropping of installation that they're washing and cleaning kind of as they go. So we didn't really take anything away, we're just changing how that process. So I did an earlier talk about premix grout, and I looked on the internet all the negatives and positives, and one guy wrote, and I can't remember his name, was Jay, 227, I hated it, it ruined my job, stuck all over the place and made a big mess. And then the other guy goes, 4 stars, loved it. If you followed the directions, I didn't have any problems that Jay had. So that's part of the new technology. If we see that, that's going to be our biggest change to our installer group, is that, hey, it is new, it's going to have a different kind of window, so when you experience that. Again, you're going to see Walter here grouting it. Color uniformity is just going to be really, really high. Again, flexibility is just something that hadn't been seen before. I think the only other question I get, probably on the architectural side, is what's its specification? Well, these are so new now, they're doing things that cements didn't do. So as an industry, we're trying to get ahead of that. So I tell everybody, we love GPS and we loved airbags, but they were actually out before the standard. So same thing, these flexible, stain-resistant grouts are out there now. They're working, and now we're working as a group of industry people to, let's have a standard, but let's not be afraid of that.
What's talking about specifications, the only place that this product cannot be used is fully submerged or in a commercial kitchen, where the use of enzymatic cleaners would be present. That's really the only 2 places that you can't use it. So we've been doing a good job of working with architects and designers. Now it's being specified commercially. So we're believing that this is the way that the industry is going.
So, and again, when we have those situations that I'm going to pressure wash them or steam clean them, I'm still going to have epoxy. So we don't take anything away from anybody. And I usually tell everybody, no matter how wonderful the products that we make, even my competitors, we always call it the kryptonite effect. Superman's the strongest guy in the world, but you whip out that green stone and he'll just drop like a rock. So the same thing. These are going to have the very, very high functional level, but because they're waterborne technology, they can't be put underwater unless they're dried like 21 days. Now, I don't think I've met a pool person or a fountain person yet. If I say 3 days, 7, it ain't gonna happen. So at that point, when we say 21, if there's a really, adamant, by the book, letting that material dry out, those can be used. And then we're able to put them in those steam showers, because again, they're not going to turn them on or operate them for that time period. But again, just the weather elements.
So I'll do the same process here. Just going to let it sit for a couple minutes, and then I'll come back and just kind of loosen up what's on top. The grout joints are actually fairly smooth already the way that they sit. So I'm just going to smooth everything else off the top. Then I'll come back and do a final wash. I did want to show you, I kind of have a different way of doing this than Alan, but I want to show you both ways. Alan will do, he likes to use the microfiber towel. In that method, you'll just take a normal microfiber towel, get it wet, wring it out very well.
Yeah, I just call it washing machine wet.
And he'll do just lay it on there, like so, and do a final pull across, and that's it.
So I call that IHOP syndrome. The waitress, I hope I'm not offending anybody that worked at IHOP. They're always so helpful, like, let me get that for you. And like, great, you kind of smeared syrup everywhere. Okay, so same thing, if we just take a second bucket of water with that clean towel, we can actually finish off a lot of other issues if water doesn't get changed. Because now, just like we don't want water spots on our car, we don't want water spots on our tile, and then it's like, you're basically shamming it. So something as simple as a microfiber, even just a casual towel type of thing, wrung out, washing machine wet, and a separate bucket so we're not transferring any of the residue. That actually is a nice way of doing that.
And I don't know if anybody saw that or noticed it, but I took some of the gold and smeared it over the black. If I would have done that with any sanded grout, I would have had to dig that out and re-grout it completely. I was able to wipe it right off. So, like I said, once it's in the joint and you leave it alone, it starts to set up fairly quickly and starts to give you those properties of water resistance and stain resistance. And so you can do a lot of things with this product that you could never do with anything else. We would like to, unless there's any questions, we'd love to invite you guys to come up to the stage. Stand on the board, play with it, feel it. It gets very rigid, so it's not as if you would typically think, oh, it's very soft, I bet, in the joint. No, it's very rigid, but it still has all the flexible properties that you would think of. I've left this bucket open because in this lighting, you can actually see all the glittering and stuff that happens in the designer grout while the bucket is open. It's actually pretty neat. So thank you guys for listening to us. We appreciate your time. We'll be here for a few minutes to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.